seconds.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Monday, May the 9th, 2022, and you are joining us just in time for this week's edition of Weekend Review with Stu. Now, I gotta give you a little bit of a preface to this show. This is one of the best ones I think we've ever done. This was a really fun episode. This is a really good conversation. A lot of good stuff in this one, and it might be the best sounding one. So I'm making strides. We're trying to get better at this thing, but a really, really good conversation with Stu Baylor is coming at you here in just a couple moments, and I'm excited for you to listen to it. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited that you are listening to OTP. If you listened last week, then you know what season it is. It's up to something season, and I am still up to something, and I can't wait to give you more details on what I'm up to, but we're still trying to piece them together. So a couple people have figured it out, a couple people know what's going on, but I cannot wait to let the masses know what is going on. Now, none of this could be going on without Beta Motorcycles, because they are the official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast. Beta Motorcycles has been family owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles that are known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta Motorcycles are the best looking bikes on the market and back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models or to find a dealer near you to get yours today. So Beta obviously has been one of the first major sponsors that the show has gotten over the years, so big shout out to Beta. I really appreciate everything that they are doing and kind of jumpstarting this whole thing, and really appreciate you all listening, because without you, these shows would not still be going on, and people like Beta Motorcycles wouldn't be showing everybody how awesome their products are and how awesome their motorcycles are. So thank you guys once again for listening. Wherever you're listening at, if you could just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That'll keep you up to date, let you know when shows drop, and when up to something season comes to a close, because then you will be the first to know. So this past weekend, it was round number 6 of the GNCC series. It was at the Ironman Raceway in Crawfordsville, Indiana. It was the Hoosier is what they call it for this first one. It was actually the first race of the year that I was not able to be at. So tried to keep you guys updated and in the loop the best that I could, which big shout out to Carson over at 10-4 Media. If you're not following 10-4 Media, go give them a follow. He provided me with some pictures and some updates of the weekend. So you saw our post at WXC and then our post about the overall. Carson was the one that took those pictures, and he also helped us out with some pictures in the past. So big thanks to him. He goes out to all the races and posts on Smug Mug and does all of that. So if you're racing those races, he's getting some really good content, and he's putting it out there for you to see. So unfortunately, I was not able to be there. I was headed north to Ironman. Had a couple things lined up, a couple things that I needed to get done there, when I got a call from my family down in Florida with a little bit of a family emergency. And I say a little bit just because I don't want to go into all the details of it, but obviously if it was something little, then I would have been an Ironman. But instead, ended up turning around, heading south. So I'm still down here in Florida now, just spending some time with family and dealing with all that stuff. So I was not at the race, but was able to stay in the loop, watch the broadcast. It was the first time all year that I've watched the broadcast live, because obviously normally I'm at the races, so it was a little bit different. Felt a little bit out of place, but there'll be more dirt bike races, and you only got one family. So thank you guys for bearing with me on that. I know I got some questions about it, but just wanted to go ahead and clear that up. So we'll be up there in Ohio for that race to see everything, catch all the action, continue with what's going on. We got a little bit of a video series coming out that we're going to unveil in the coming weeks. Really bummed that I wasn't able to film for that, especially with the subjects involved. They had a really good weekend, every single one of them. So we'll give you more details on that coming soon, but very excited to be working on that. Also, very excited to be doing the podcast. Very excited that you were here listening to the podcast. Putting things together, making this thing grow. I know it took a little bit of an adjustment period, but we're trying to get everything under control, under wraps, underway, and make the quality of the show better. So really appreciate you all listening, and really appreciate that you guys are going to be along for the growth as well. That's what I'm excited for, and we're on the horizon of it. But this episode is brought to you in part by Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer and financial advisor that helps his clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. If you or someone you know wants to save and invest for your future, or is already retired and needs advice for income during retirement, Zach Tussle is always my first recommendation. Find out more by Googling Zach Tussle or on their website at financialadvisorsdenvernc.com. A couple people listening to this show have reached out to Zach, and a couple people reached out to me about Beta, reached out to Beta. So it's cool when you hear me announcing races. I always say support the people that support the sport that you love, and so couldn't thank them anymore for their support. Zach Tussle running the OTP kit on his Cowie now, so that thing looked pretty sick. And then this Beta, it's going to be in action. We're going to be running it at some races coming up, and I'm excited for that as well. Also, before we get right into this thing, I want to give a shout-out once again to our buddies over at Armored Graphics. Armored Graphics has been with us since the very beginning. They did the graphics for the JGR Suzuki team when they were here. So you can check them out, armoredgraphics.com, or on their socials at Armored Graphics. Check out everything they got going on. Remember, when you order something online, you can use promo code OTP20, and that's going to save you 20% off of your graphics because you are a listener of On the Pipe podcast. So that's a really good deal. They have the best quality graphics, some of the best artwork around, and you can get your very own kit directly from Armored Graphics at armoredgraphics.com. We're going to move into the GNCC here, and Stu Baylor is going to join us in just a couple of moments. Looking on the horizon, looking at some other stuff going on. Round 4 of the VXCS was this past weekend. That's the series in Virginia that has been going on. They dealt with a little bit of a mutter that was going on this past weekend, but still sounded like it was an awesome weekend of racing action. Steven Edmondson ended up taking the win down there. And I know there's a lot more GNCC type riders, national type riders that went to this round of the VXCS, so that was cool to see as well. Second place on the day was Ethan Ficklin, going out there and getting it done, and rounding out the podium was, I believe, the reigning defending VXCS overall champion Robbie Norwood, and then in fourth place was Levi Elliott, and fifth place was Matthew Howard. So Levi Elliott actually came out and joined us at the Middies Hare Scrambles last weekend, which, speaking of, next weekend, well, I guess this coming weekend, will be a Middies Hare Scramble at a VXCS track. It's called Catfish Pond. It's up in Virginia. That's a good track as well. So the VXCS series, it's on the rise. I think it was last year, new ownership came in, so they're doing a really good job with that series, and I can't wait to go up there and check one of them out as well, because I see the pictures, see the videos, and see all the hubbub about people racing them, and it looks like a really cool series. So stoked to be able to go up there and check them out. But with that being said, kind of taking the main focus on what was going on over the weekend was the GNCC. As we mentioned, it was in Indiana, so let's get right into that. As Stu Baylor joins us on the phone here now, It was round number 6. Ben Kelley gets win number 6. 6 for 6 on the year, ties the GNCC all-time record for most consecutive wins. And obviously that's going to be on the line in Ohio. Second place in the XC1 class, Trevor Bollinger, making a late pass to take that second place spot just ahead of Josh Toth. So Josh Toth makes a return to the podium, gets that third place spot overall. XC2, our sole points leader, not tied. He was the points leader going into the weekend, and now he has a bigger gap on that after the weekend. Lyndon Snodgrass grabs the win, but he had a bit of a battle there with Gus Reardon. They swapped back and forth throughout the whole race. So they're training partners, and they ended up racing each other the whole entire race. And then rounding out that XC2 podium in the third place spot, making it a full Oceania sweep, Liam Draper makes a return back to the podium as well. So it's been a bit since we've seen him there, so I know he's got to be happy with that. XC3, Jake Froman, I believe, got his first win. I think that is his first XC3 Pro win. If not, then it's been a little bit since he got it done. Second place, Hunter Neuwirth. He's been ripping in that XC3 class. And then the former champion Zach Hayes rounds out the podium in third. And then our WXC class, Corey Steed, makes the last lap pass once again over Brandy Richards to grab the win ahead of her. And then Rachel Archer rounds out the podium in third after a last lap crash that left her pinned underneath a bike. So she holds on to that third place spot. And your top amateur also making a return back to that number 1 spot, Bubs Tasha. So Stu, a lot of storylines on the weekend, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of surprises, and some of the surprises are people that you know very well. Liam Draper back on the podium, Bubs Tasha back in the win column, teammate Rachel Archer battling back for that third place spot, Bollinger getting a second again. Of all these results, of everything that happened, what was the most surprising thing that you saw?
It's tough. The race was on, and kind of aside from Ben, throughout the day, like there was a lot of changes on the course, a lot of yo-yo effect. I would have to say that the most surprising would be seeing the WXC results. I was actually on the phone with my mechanic. He was out in the woods. I was trying to get updates throughout the race, trying to figure out where everybody was, and I couldn't believe that Corey pulled it off again. So kudos to her. She has figured out her racecraft. She's always been probably, I would say, arguably the fastest girl in that class with a moto background. She just never could put it together for the entire race. I think she had a lot of issues with her line selection, not necessarily carrying speed, but always recreating it, driving in too hard, riding it like a moto track, and not playing the long game. And I think she's kind of showed that she's figured that out. All those girls obviously rip. Brandy Richards is I would say arguably, not even arguably, the fastest woman in the world right now, based off last year.
Yeah.
So to beat her, that's huge. To come from behind, I think she was like 18 seconds down, then 4 seconds down, and then take the lead. That's huge. Rachel has figured out the GNCCs and been definitely strong throughout the last 2 years. Just seems like a couple mistakes setting her aside, but it looks like Corey was able to capitalize once again. Not sure the points, but I think that should be tightening things up for the WXC battle as well.
Yeah, and it's funny or interesting, I guess, that you lead off with the WXC battle too, because that one surprised me as well. As you mentioned, last year, Brandy Richards swept the ISDE, won every single test, won the ISDE overall, and then when she came out and raced Bigger Buck, the second Big Buck, she it's kind of the same thing happened. She led a lot of the race, and then Corey was able to make the pass on the last lap and grab the win from her, and Corey does the same thing once again. But I think one of the biggest surprises to me also in that class is Rachel Archer. last year we saw her win more races than anybody, and really be the one challenging Becca and battling Becca for that title. I mean, she won the last race at Ironman by 12 minutes, and so it seems like she's been having a string of bad luck here lately. While Corey's kind of found a hot streak, and then even Taylor getting back on it after a couple down years. So,
yeah, honestly, I mean, I have to say, like, this season, the XC1 has not been the class to watch by any means, but the WXC and the XC2 have kept things interesting. Even XC3, seeing a lot of different lead changes throughout the day, and also different winners throughout the season. It's fun to watch racing that's back and forth, not just one guy winning. No offense to Ben. I mean, obviously he's killing it, but it is boring for the viewers. So, I guess as we've kind of done with the rest of the episodes, we've kind of skipped over Ben. I think we should also talk a little bit more about Ben and what I think has changed in his riding. I think last year, not to flash myself in the spotlight, but I think him battling with me, and not only battling with me, but battling with my fans as well, has kind of helped him boost his career. And the reason being is as a racer, you have to line up for you and know that you're the guy to beat. You can't change your mindset based on how other people feel or the events that take place over 3 hours. And I think that Ben has done a really, really good job as far as staying level-headed, doing what he needs to do. And I think a lot of it came with some of the adversity that the fans threw his way last year. Obviously, I'm pretty good at playing mind games. Not necessarily that I'm directing it towards anybody. It just always comes off that I'm playing mind games because I'm lying, I'm bubbly, I'm bullshitting with everybody. I'm smiling until the flag drops, and I'm not out there treating it straight, treating it like a job. It's just, it gets to a lot of riders. Like it definitely does. So I think Ben figured out last year that he needs to stop focusing on me and focus on himself. And I think that it's definitely showing this year. He is only focused on himself. And, even we can go back and say, oh, well, you're injured. Even at Big Buck, I mean, yeah, I was closing the gap, but he rode a near perfect race. And I doubt I would have been able to close the gap to the finish. It was, he had me beat at a technical home track for me. So Ben has figured out his racecraft. He's got the fitness. The thing that I saw with Ben this weekend was just watching. He kind of pulled a Caleb. And it's funny because I texted my brother before the race started, and I said, you have to be there when Ben breaks away. And this is an old thing that the last year or two riding with Caleb, I started to learn and kind of paid attention to the way that he attacked and when he did it. And certain tracks were different. And I know with Caleb in his ear, there's definitely going to be some KR strategy out there. And from the videos that I saw, people sending me videos of the track, basically just rubbing it in my face that track was perfect conditions for me. It's what I trained all year. Deep ruts, gnarly conditions. I would say that day would have been a strategy to kind of play with the guys, stay close. When you start to feel fatigued out of your other guys, make your break. And I told Grant, I said, you need to be there on lap 2 when he makes that break. And if you go back to live feed, it may have been lap 3 before he finally did it, but it was just snap the fingers and he's gone. I mean, he had those guys where he wanted them. He did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. And my text to Grant was, you need to be there when Ben breaks away or he's going to beat you guys by 4 minutes. and I think he won by 3:47. So from 1,000 miles away, based on Snapchat videos, I knew exactly what Ben was going to do. And that's a lot of the race strategy, and knowing what the best strategy is, and also knowing how to use it against your competition. I think he did exactly what he needed to do, and it's cool to see the strategy side of it, because it's not, obviously everybody's going as fast as they can for as long as they can, but there's places where you can take a break, you can take a breather, and know what sections of the track you can catch your breath to push again. And I think that's kind of what Ben's doing at this point. He's figured out when he needs to push, when he needs to break away. And Ben is not the fastest rider. Like, I would even go back as far as saying that Caleb was never the fastest rider when he was winning. I always thought that was. Like, that is a super, super aggressive rider when the conditions get really gnarly. And certain days, I mean, we would see Thad's speed. Like, he could drop the hammer and put a minute on guys in a single lap. Caleb was just really good at putting himself on those days when Thad was really fast, putting himself on Thad's rear wheel, waiting for that break, waiting for Thad to get a little bit tired, using his lines, and then making the pass and making it stick to the finish. I think that Caleb liked to lead the races. He liked to control it from the front. And I think that Ben's kind of doing the same thing. He puts on a hard charge, gets to the front, paces with other guys, figures out, as a racer, as a good racer, a crafty racer, you can hear and feel, you can sense where other riders are faster. You can sense if they took an outside line and closed the gap. You can sense if they bobbled. You know these things as a crafty racer. And I think Ben's putting himself in that position, feeling out the other guys in the front of the pack, knowing when he needs to make that break and executing it. And, I think that's been a huge key to his season thus far.
Yeah, and watching Ben ride, this was the first race this season that I wasn't able to be at. So it was the first race that I was watching the whole broadcast live, and Ben just looked so calm, so cool, so collected, and just out there riding by himself. And I mean, there was a point in the broadcast where he's ahead by 2 minutes, and you see him come through one of the camera shots, and I mean, he's riding as aggressive as if he was trying to come back from 5th place, trying to get a podium. And I guess from a standpoint of you guys riding at that level, I mean, Ben won the championship last year. He's got the number 1 plates and the target on his back this year, and he keeps on showing up and doing the right things and winning these races by a long shot. How hard is it to push yourself when you're that far ahead as far as the points are concerned, and even like physically on the track, kind of riding by yourself, like no one's there pushing you? We saw all those years of Thad and Caleb wheel to wheel. It would be those guys a couple minutes ahead of 3rd place, but they were always pushing each other. How hard is that to be able to ride your own race and still push yourself, knowing that you're getting these pit boards saying, hey, P1 ahead 2.5 minutes?
It's honestly easier. Like, there was a few days last year where I had those days, and usually I would back it down a little bit more than what he's done. Like Georgia last year, I went from last to first in 4 miles and gapped the guys by a minute quick, and then just kind of floated where I needed to. Just tried to let the race come to me. Ben keeps his head down. And I'm obviously not saying it's wrong. I mean, if you can pull a 4-minute lead, and let's say that something happens, like you've got 4 minutes to figure out how to get yourself out of a bad situation. So it's definitely not a bad thing. I think that there was days that Caleb could have done the same thing, but didn't, because he wanted to maintain a little bit differently. Ben's strategy is a little bit different, and it obviously works. So I'm not knocking it, but there's days where you can you get that lead and you just can't back down. And it's not that you're riding out of control. You just know that you're mentally sharp at the pace that you're running. It was during Supercross. I think it was Adam Cicerella talked about it a little bit. I want to say maybe when he was discussing Christian Craig and maintaining the race and trying to keep the points that he needed to win, he slowed down and started to make mistakes. And sometimes when you slow down, you're just not quite all there mentally. So when you keep that charge on, you're just mentally clear. You're in that, you hear people talk about the flow state. Like, that's kind of where Ben's at, especially this weekend. Like, he was in that flow state where it was just easy and things were naturally coming. And on days like that, it's hard to make a mistake. I mean, there's been, national enduros, like, obviously he did really well at the last national enduro. And I think that's kind of also helped him when he is in those positions where he's got a gap. National enduro, you are the only pro in your line. You don't hear another rider. You pass some lappers and that's it. You have to stay mentally sharp, mentally prepared for anything that can come at you. And you're also pushing the edge, and you push it as far as you can without making mistakes. So when you're at that zone, things just start clicking off. And there's some days that are better than others. I mean, there's been national enduros where I've ridden as fast as I thought I could. I couldn't physically go any faster, and I was going backwards. There's days at national enduros where I felt like I was trail riding. I was under the weather. I was, not feeling my best, and I win by 2 minutes. And it's just a matter of clicking off consecutive lines, laps, sections, and piecing together that full race and trying to stay in that, that same flow state, if you will. I think that's just where he is. When he gets that big margin, he's comfortable, he's confident, his riding's good. He doesn't have pressure on him to catch up or pull away. And that's when most mistakes are usually made, is when you're trying to run somebody down or when you're trying to pull away from somebody. So if you can just stay in that consistent spot where you're just clicking off every turn, every section, every lap, it's easy. Sometimes it's a lot easier to ride than you think at that aggressive, fast pace.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed between him and Caleb, because you kind of alluded to it too, is like Caleb, I feel like was one of the best at riding to the level that he needed to be at. You didn't see Caleb win by 5, 6, 7 minutes, although there's days where he probably could have. It seemed like he stayed right at that level that he needed to be at to not be pushing it, but also still like stay in control of the race. Same thing like watching him at Full Gases. He would put in one insane test and get ahead by 10 seconds and then just maintain throughout the rest of the day. And it's like you see Ben winning by these big gaps, but it still doesn't seem like he's riding over his head. Like, it just seems like he's out there flowing and just going after it. And like you said, kind of on autopilot and just running that pace. But we kind of talked about it early in the season, and you immediately shut it down. And I have a feeling you might immediately shut it down again. When do we start talking about a perfect season becoming even a possibility, remote possibility?
I can't see it. It obviously is getting more and more to the point where it could possibly happen. But there's still going to be that one Ironman with uncontrollable rain, unforeseen lappers, holes that might get you, bike issues that could possibly happen. I mean, obviously KTM and their program has it really dialed. I mean, I think Caleb went 7 years without a DNF, 8 years without a DNF that was mechanically related. there was, I believe, maybe one DNF in there and some races that he didn't line up to. And Ben's on the same bike, same program, so the chances of it happening are obviously fairly slim as long as he's a smart rider. But I just can't see the perfect season just because of all the unforeseen obstacles that are thrown at you over 3 hours. I mean, that, like, when you really look at it, there's so much time to have something happen throughout the year. But at this point, I would say that he's the only. I know he's tied the most wins consecutively, but I don't know if anybody's ever done it in the first 6. I think who was it? U-Haul also had 6 consecutive, but I don't think it was the first 6. I could be wrong there. So he's got a stronger hand than anybody to date, and with injuries and other things that have happened, I think that it is possible, but it's so slim that I would not say I couldn't back it. I could not jump on that one.
Yeah, I know it's tough to have that question and to go at it and look at it, and like you said, there's just so many variables involved when you're talking about different weather conditions, different track conditions, different tracks, everything that can happen over the course of 3 hours. And I mean, given the fact that if you have an early mechanical issue or you have something going on, there's really not as much pressure to get back up to the front because of the lead that he's built up to this point. But I did just want to run it by you real quick, just at your level, because you look at comments and you look at the public thing, like it's a fun thing for the public to talk about, but there's just so many variables involved to make that happen, and that's why nobody, including Caleb or anybody, has gotten to this point, or other than one person, as far as winning even 6 in a row, which isn't even half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think races like Snowshoe or Ironman last year that stand out to be tough on equipment. That's where I just see mistakes could be made that are unforeseen, and I obviously I'd love to sit back and say it could happen, but at the same time I don't, even if I was in the same position that he's in, I would say that the deck's stacked against you. I mean, I really don't see a way for it to happen. Now, could he win 10 of 13 rounds? I think that is definitely more than possible at this point.
Yeah, but to make all 13, there'd have to be a lot of things in the world to line up all in Ben Kelley's favor.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
I think looking at the way he's riding right now, I would even say that he would probably beat the all-time win record for a single season, and probably, if I was betting money on it, I would say 11. I would say we'll get 11 wins out of Ben this year.
11. So 11 is the over/under set by Stu Baylor.
If I had to put money on it, that's where I would put my money.
Dang, and that in itself is a very, 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 very tall task. But so going off of that, and like I said, with you being on the sidelines and with you battling for those championships and stuff regularly, it does kind of get hard for me to ask these questions. But I think your insight, being at that level and being in that position, is what a lot of people like to hear from. So going off of the Ben thing and looking at what he's doing, a couple weeks ago you told us that seeing him win was what got you off the couch, threw the neck brace off, and went on a bike ride to Nowhere in Mind just to train, just to get back on the bike. I saw you actually riding on Sunday, right after the race, maybe during the race or before the race. But what is it like for you being on the sidelines and watching this happen?
It's tough. I mean, I feel like my speed has definitely not changed So as a racer, you want to throw a leg over the bike and go back after it. And I think this weekend I would, just because of the conditions, even though I'm out of shape, I would say that I could have matched Ben's pace up to the point that he pulled away. And if I could have stayed with him, until he put a 2-minute gap on everybody, I could have faded out and possibly even ended up second, just based off of that track condition and the speed that I have. So it's definitely tough to watch that, but I'm a realist as well, and I do not think by any means that this weekend I could have beat Ben. I think I would have, even if everything just lined up perfectly, had a good start, got with him, stayed with him to the halfway point, second would be the best, and that's a tall order. I mean, other guys are riding really great, and it's a lot different watching from 1,000 miles away than being there. But, I know what I need to work on as a racer. I know that last year I was the best guy on the track at any given day. I had the best opportunity to win any race that I lined up to. And I had the mindset to put me there. Coming back from it, it's going to be a little bit tougher because Ben's got that mindset. And if I line up and I think that I'm going to win and I get smoked, it's going to be that much tougher to push through. So, I know that anything can happen, but I want to come back before summer break. There's a lot of people that don't think that it's the greatest idea, but I think that I want to know where I am before summer break so that I know what I need to work on during the summer break. And I think that there's only one way to get prepared for 3 hours, and that's to do it. So, for me, sitting on the sidelines, like on Sunday, I did 3 1-hour motos, which I never do. It was one of those days where I was just set out to go and put myself through misery and get blisters and shaved ass and blisters on the inside of my knee and crash a few times, kick my bike, cuss myself out, play competitive lap times with myself.
Be sore on a Monday morning again.
What's that?
I said be sore on a Monday morning again.
It's Monday night and I'm still sore. But yeah, like I started riding before the live feed, watched the live feed, finished after the live feed, and kind of stayed involved in the race and watched what was going on and tried to work on what I thought I needed to work on while watching the race and seeing where Ben is. So, from the sideline, it definitely sucks. Like, I feel like this year, had I not been injured, it would be like watching the races, knowing the races where I'm strong, my bike setup, my personal riding suits me the best for that condition. I feel like, and obviously this is just personal, it could be completely wrong, but I feel like this year I should have won 3 and he should have won 3 at this point, just watching the way that he's ridden, seeing what I've seen on the track, and I think it would still be a good season. But I do not think that I would be 6 for 6 by any means. There's been 3 races where this weekend included, Ben has just been on another level, and he's just riding so good in certain terrains, and he's going to be a handful for me when I come back, because that's going to be the position that I want to be in. I want to be where he is right now. And I felt like I should be at this point in the season. I felt like I should be up front battling for a championship this year, and I'm not. So, from the sideline, it sucks, but I know where I need to be. I've been injured before. I've watched races before. This one's been a little bit different. A life-threatening injury is a little bit different than anything, in the past, and it's a little spookier, but that's one of those things as well that I just got to get off my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the more you ride and the more you're getting back into it, where are you at as far as your injury is concerned? And talking to you and asking you that question, as always, is a little bit different than talking to any other human being. But going into Missouri National Enduro this upcoming weekend, is that even a factor at this point? In your
No, I mean I'm riding really well. I was able to click off very consistent laps practicing this past week. I've got my riding legs back under me. There's still some things that I need to work on, but Missouri's been one of my favorite races. And, as far as the injury is concerned, like, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. When I throw a leg over the bike, like, I've been injured before. I've come back from injuries before. I've had 11 surgeries over my career. I've obviously never been quite sidelined like this one. I've always been able to stay a little bit active, and this one, it was like literally doing nothing. So that's a little bit tougher to come back from than other ones. But enduros are a good place to get my breaks and take a rest and learn when to push, when not to push. And, I think that I'm capable of winning this weekend. Do I think that this is a race I'm going to come in and dominate? Absolutely not. But I've had really good rides here in the past, and I talk about it a lot on these episodes. Like, racer mentality is a lot of it, and this is one of those races where I've done really well in the past. So coming in, I feel very confident to it. I really enjoyed the terrain. I know my bike's set up here, and it's one of those places I think I can definitely do well and kind of forget about the injury. But as far as the injury goes, there was a little scare. I can't remember if we discussed it last episode. We looked at a CT scan that was a little more revealing to what we had originally thought. There was more fractures than we thought, and we thought it was going to be more like 3 to 6 months off the bike, and then get another CT, and the doctor says you're good to go. So it was like kind of thrown on me. Like, I really didn't expect to be racing at the last National Enduro. I thought that I'd be out until probably summer break, but it was definitely a good surprise, and definitely thankful to be back on the motorcycle. But at the same time, there is still that thought in the back of your mind about the what if, and that's the toughest thing to forget about. But on race day, like at the last National Enduro, test one, I thought about it. Aside from that, I kind of just moved forward and didn't really think about the injury anymore. Just knew that I needed to be focused on hitting my marks. When your mind's wandering, it's easy to make costly mistakes. That's why you see a lot of mistakes happen late in a race or in the heat of a battle, because late in a race, you get thinking about other things. Your mind's just beat down. Or when you're in a battle, a lot of times you're thinking about the other riders. So that's another reason the enduros are a better place for me to come back to for now, is I'm not worried about other riders. I'm only worried about myself. And yes, there's still a lot of timid that I'm going to have to break through as far as getting back off the track. Like, enduros are one of those places where you've got to shave corners, you've got to straighten sections out, and there's always that chance that there's a stump under there. So, coming from what I hit and knowing the factors that played into it, when I see lappers coming up in a National Enduro, it's a little tougher for me to take my balls out of the purse and get off the track and make that pass. But, that's probably the next thing that I really need to focus on is kind of getting away from that mentality and getting back to true race form.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of hard to not think about that, especially when you're going in those uncharted territories of the racetracks. But between National Enduros, like when you're racing them all, and this might be a dumb question, but a lot of people have different philosophies to it. Are you checking your test times at every single stop, or are you kind of just going off a feel throughout the day and checking in periodically? Like, do you like to know where you're at all times?
When I was younger, I didn't. But as a younger rider, I was less calculated, and my emotions drove my riding. The older I get, the more calculated I am, and the less my emotions play a factor in the way that I'm riding. I can think things out logically versus, the younger rider mentality of shit, I thought I gave it everything. Why am I getting beat? I've got to figure out how to go faster. Like now it's okay. I gave it everything and I'm getting beat. Am I giving it too much? Do I need to slow down, check myself a little bit, carry more speed rather than slamming into corners and recreate the speed? Do I need to stand up more? Do I need to sit down? Do I need to change my bike setup? What do I need to throw at this that is within my power to turn this race around? So when I look at the test times, I always kind of think of a few things. Like there was 2 tests that I gave up a lot of time last race. There was one I hit the ground. I always count when I crash. That way I know when I come in, if I was down for 11 seconds and I lost that section by 20, then I got beat by 9. If I was down for 11 seconds and I won the test by 2, then I figure out, okay, I need to ride the same exact way. That crash was a mistake. I should have won by 13, whatever it may be. So as a racer now, I use those test times to base the way that I'm going to go in and approach the following.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Especially like as long as you've been doing it and at the level you've been doing it. But yeah, it was just something I was always curious about, because there are some people that don't want to know. Maybe it gets into their head too much, or they got to think that they have too big of a gap to make up. So I've heard different things from different people. That's why I was just curious as to what you thought about it. But going off of your riding and obviously, like you said, going to the National Enduro this weekend, I kind of wanted to get back to the GNCC stuff just because it did just happen over the weekend. But one of the major rides that we saw was Lane Michael. Lane Michael running up front. He was running a really good race. Bollinger kind of doing the opposite. He's coming from the back, ended up in that second place spot where we saw Lane kind of drop back. So I guess a 2-part question. One, do you know anything that happened there, or if it was injuries bothering Lane in that instance? And also, one of the things we talked about before the season is who would be challenging for wins and who would be able to battle up front. For one of these other XC1 riders to get a win over Ben Kelley this year, now that we're halfway through the season, who do you think that person could be to challenge up front?
I would have to say that the strongest finishers that I've seen this year, aside from Ben, would be Grant and Trevor. The other guys seem to have a real struggle with fade. And if Grant or Trevor could figure out how to get up front early and be there when Ben makes that push, I think that one of those guys, if I had to put money on somebody doing it, I would have to say it would be one of those two. Just looking at results, looking at lap times, watching from my standpoint, seeing the guys' look of exhaustion after a race. Like, I think if Grant would have been there early on at Coker, he probably could have run with Ben. I think that there's been a couple races where if Trevor was up there earlier, I think Georgia possibly, Trevor, I know he had a little fade there, but I think that if he would have been up there and seen the lines differently, that's another race, you could have seen him or Craig possibly battle to the finish with Ben. But it's tough to say. I mean, the margin's so big right now. And the other riders, I mean, we've seen second place has been like 5 different guys in 6 races or something now. So realistically, it could be anyone. But just looking at the last laps and knowing what riders are capable of digging into, I think that Trevor or Grant would be the 2 that I would say, just if they were there early, they could pull it off. But they've got a lot of work to do in the first half of the race. And I think both of those guys need to really, really work on their speed, and not necessarily just their speed, but flawless speed. When Ben drops the hammer and he makes that push, you can't override your riding capability with emotion. You've got to be able to know your marks at that pace. And if you can elevate your speed 10%, if you can figure out a way to go 10% faster and an all-out sprint, which is obviously that's crazy numbers. At our level, you're more like 2%. But if you could, per se, raise that sprint speed by even just a few percent to where you can ride at 98% and nail your marks and stay with Ben, that would be where Grant or Trevor could possibly pull it off in the end just by being there. With that being said, it's hard. I mean, Josh has a ton of speed. Lane has a ton of speed, and maybe they can figure out 3 hours. But, thus far in either of their careers, they're not historically the strongest finishers. So it's hard, it's hard to say one way or the other. But there are definitely tracks that suit somebody who might put on that extra little bit of fade. If you find a hard, slick, dusty race where it's not as rough, it's not as demanding, and you can get up front and get a little dust in between you and Ben, that's where you can see Lane or Josh use their sprint speed to control a race. But it's all hypothetical. It's tough to say. Like I said, I'd say that Grant and Trevor, as far as finishing, if they can just figure out the first part of the race, I think that would be easier. And then, after that, I just it'd be tough to get by Ben and actually hold it to the finish.
Yeah, and so Bollinger, he's mentioned several times now, the few times he's been on the podium, rather, he's like, these boys are trying to win the race on the first lap. So he's kind of admitted that the beginning of the race is a struggle, and I think the way his caption read this week, if I'm not mistaken, was something about, or maybe it was his post-race interview, about being able to get a start and be running up front from the beginning. And as you mentioned, he's typically what we see as a strong finisher. But Bollinger, we've also seen him just get into the National Enduros over the past couple years. And I know he's tried his hand at some sprint Enduros, but not a whole lot of them. From someone that has raced all 3 series and has won at all 3 series, does racing the sprint on off weekends or racing National Enduros on off weekends, do you think being in that competition environment and being forced to sprint, does that help with sprint speed at GNCC, or is it so much different that it's not really comparable?
It is 100% what turned around my riding. In 2016, I lined up at a sprint enduro and got beat by an A rider, a GNCC A rider. And there were days where I was battling with Billy Schlag. And Caleb Russell, 2 laps into every GNCC, would put on this crazy charge. And I could not match his speed. There was just no possible way I could do it. In 2017, all off season, all I trained was on a moto, on grass track, and sprint speed. That is all I focused on. I believe that was the year that I won the full gas championship. And when Caleb made that push, I was able to stay with it. Sometimes not always. But as I developed as a rider and I elevated my top speed by using sprint enduros to force myself out of my comfort zone, I started closing those gaps. And I think that for me personally, it had a lot to do with it. And even, that same year, I went to ISDE and got 4th overall at ISDE against the best riders in the world. My previous best result was like a top 20, like 17. So I do think that style of racing does help a lot. And I think that for Trevor or guys like Trevor and Grant, I think that if I were working with those guys, I would be pushing them to race those races just because I think that it helped my career. And I see a lot of my old style of racing in those guys. I was, they talked about it on live feed all the time. They said, you just can't count out the Baylors. You can't count out the Baylors. I know they're 8th and 9th right now, but there's 2 laps to go and 2 minutes separating them from the podium. And Grant or myself could always somehow squeak out, passing back all the XC2 guys that passed in the first 2 laps and squeak out a podium. And it happened a lot. So I think that those series help the U.S. guys elevate that speed. I think that Caleb training with Alton and doing the motocross style changed the way that he could push and the way that he could attack lines at high speed without making mistakes. So, to answer your question, I think that is a very, very big part of my career. So I think that it would help other racers as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you keep mentioning Grant, obviously your younger brother. You guys, as far as a public standpoint, I don't think could be any further from polar opposites. As far as we see your training, we see what you're doing, we see what you have going on. Grant is a guy that we see on race weekends, and that's about it. What do you have any insight as to what Grant's program is? Like, what does he do for training? What does he do to get prepared for the races?
I don't think he does enough, to be blunt. I mean, I think that he rides himself into shape every year, and by mid-season to the end of the season, he can start riding stronger because he doesn't put the work in at the front side. He's a great racer. He's crafty. He's smart with his lines. He's got probably more natural talent than anybody in XC1, but I just don't think that he's ever really had the work ethic. And I think that a lot of it is where he is mentally. I think that over his career, he had been screwed by quite a few teams in the past, and it hurt him. Like he is lining up to race because that's his job and that's what he makes his house payments with. But aside from that, I think that Grant just doesn't love it enough to put the extra effort in just because of past experiences with different teams and different circumstances that have happened throughout his career. I mean, sometimes it was injury, sometimes it was team related, sometimes it was financial, sometimes it was family, but he's pretty bad at losing focus on what he really wants to do. And I think that from my standpoint, I think that that's a lot of it. I think that his program's not there because his heart's not there.
Interesting. But it's cool to see him have success, and I mean, get on the podium this year, and we saw him win Big Buck last year. So it's cool when he does come out swinging and make those runs. And like you said, a ton of talent on the bike. So I think he's a guy that we can see running up front more often as well. So that's why I was just kind of wondering about what he does, because he kind of keeps it private and keeps to himself. So I was just always curious as to what went on with it. But I don't want to keep you too long, but I also want to get into a couple of the other guys that you've been familiar with, the Tealy Energy boys. I mean, Liam Draper makes a return to the podium, and then Bubs. Bubs has had some hand issues and some injuries going on, and he ends up getting top amateur spots. Have you got a chance to talk to either one of them about the weekend, or what did you kind of observe from their standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, talked to both of them, and Liam had a really, really solid ride. He definitely put on a strong fade there at the end, but, a lot of people don't know, like, Liam was literally just cleared to start riding again, and obviously he's been racing the first half of the season, but he's a hard worker, and he just had a really tough time with his injury, with his knee last year. Liam's one of those really, really clean, fun riders to watch, the way that he manipulates the motorcycle. He comes from a trials background, so he hops the bike a lot, stands up a lot. Fun to watch the way that he can manipulate the bike in technical situations, but a lot of times he overrides it, and I think that's a lot of his issues why he fades. But it was good to definitely see him back up there. He just about threw it away there to Ryder at the end, but I think that he needed that podium probably worse than anybody at this point, just for his mental side. I mean, he put a lot of work in this off season. He struggled a lot. I mean, there was a lot of days where he couldn't put 2 good days together on the bike just because of his leg. He lost, I think, 20-something pounds with that knee injury, and he just couldn't build muscle, couldn't keep his program together because he had so many issues out of it. But it was good to see him back, and like I said, I think that he definitely needed that more than anybody out there to keep him involved and enjoying racing. I've seen him pretty down on himself here lately, and then on Bubs, that was a really good ride. He was smart. He did what I've been trying to tell him to do all year, and he won the race and didn't worry about how fast he could go. And that, I know he won by a big margin, but he was out riding for him and nailing his marks and not just racing all day. And, we talk about it a lot in GNCC. You can't just race all day. You have to break down the track. You race the sections that you can race. You take breaks when you can. And obviously, when I say take a break, I mean sit down while you're going down pro row and take 2 good breaths and a sip of water. But Bub's is one of those guys who just he came from Moto, then J-Day, and he just knows how to race. And the weekend before he was running, I think he was 35 seconds off of Ben Kelley at the J-Day. So he's fast. I mean, he beat Ricky up there, obviously top GNCC guy, and then he goes to GNCC's and can hardly beat the A class that Ricky's putting 10, 12 minutes on, the guy that he beat the weekend prior. So I think that he's finally figured out a little bit more about GNCC. I think it's going to take a lot of work, but he's another New England guy that just needs that breakthrough year. And, we've seen it out of Toth, we've seen it out of Kelly, we've seen it out of Johnny G. There's a lot of guys from that area, and they're very aggressive because of the J-Days. They're fast. They're good racers, but they just can't seem to put it together in GNCC for a few years. And I think that, he could possibly be one of the next guys. I mean, on the practice tracks, he's as fast as any pro. It's just figuring out 3 hours. So he definitely put the right foot forward this weekend. And, another guy that when I was at the Yamaha shop earlier, the guys were kind of praising a little bit with his racecraft and how he just won the race and didn't try to go out and do what he's done in years past, is Lennon Snodgrass. Obviously, I ride a lot with those guys in the off season. Strang and Lennon came down quite a bit this past year, and we found each other quite a few times. And Lennon, from what the opposing team saw, was a very mature ride. I mean, Corey and Spanky were sitting there talking about it at the shop, and they said, he just did what he needed to do. He wanted to keep that white plate, obviously, and we know Mike had some bike issues, but Lennon rode a smart race, a good race, and held it to the finish. Not necessarily ever getting to a point where he pushed out of his comfort zone to do so. He just rode his race and did exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah, and as you were kind of talking about Bubs transitioning and learning it and figuring it out, Lyndon was the first person that came into my mind, so it's funny that you brought that up. But, yeah, you watched him come over and show just absolutely outrageous speed. I mean, he's got speed to run with just about whoever. And then just running into some issues here and there. It seems like this year, I think this is his second full-time year or third year into it, and now he's really putting it together and putting those mature rods in and figured out the 3 hours, and he's got that white plate for a reason. I think he showed that to a lot of people on Sunday. And guys like Gus, we talked about Gus Reardon coming into the season. Now he's kind of getting to learn from Lyndon, who's a couple years into figuring this thing out, and then Strang, who's 15 years into figuring it out. And it was kind of ironic. The last or at Camp Coker, we saw him get out front and lead the overall and kind of blow himself out, running away from everybody and fade in that race, to where now he comes out with a calmer mind, calmer mentality, and battles back and forth with Lyndon and everybody up front and ends up in second. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the racecraft and slowing the race down and doing what you need to do. And it's cool to see the guys that start out like exactly in the position that Bubs is in right now, and then moving into those positions to where you're winning XC2, leading XC2 like Toth, like Kelley, and now Ben obviously in the XC1 class and Toth as well. So it seems like the race craft and the race IQ plays into this thing just as much as speed does.
Yeah, 100%. I think that a lot of what you see out of Gus and Lennon is no different than what you see with Ben, is who they have in their ear. Josh Strang is a phenomenal GNCC racer, a veteran, and he's seen what I've seen, what Caleb's seen, and been there. So when you line up to each race, I think there's a different strategy for every track and every condition of that track. Big Buck 1 versus Big Buck 2 would have two totally different strategies. Ironman 1 and Ironman 2 will probably have two totally different strategies. But when you've got somebody like a Josh Strang in your ear, I think that helps a lot for the guys who listen and the guys who want to succeed with it. And I think that some old dogs are a little more stubborn. Some guys, Bubs is pretty damn stubborn. He's very hard to explain things to and work with. But then you got kids like Gus who are very easy and open-minded, and I think having the right guy in your corner is good in those situations. And having Strang there for those guys obviously worked out well this weekend. And that's one of those tracks where historically Josh has ridden really well. So
yep.
Maybe it's a little bit of the Aussie riding style as well, but nonetheless, it is 3 hours. You can't just go fast. You've got to have a little bit of strategy. You've got to know when to push, when to save yourself. And, Josh actually got to ride with those guys a little bit. I'm sure he was showing those guys the lines, and I'm sure that they learned a little bit by getting halfway up into that XC1 class and getting to see some of the veterans and how they ride. I know even when I was in XC2, I would get in with those XC1 guys and learn a lot. And, even local racing, I can remember when I was an A-rider, there was a Mid-East where I actually, as an A-rider, beat Charlie Mullins, Glenn Kearney, and Jesse Robinson. As a 200 A-rider, I went and beat those boys.
Oh, wow.
And, to me, I'm the hot shot now. I'm the big guy. So the next Mid-East, I line up, and I am fucking getting after it. Like, there was no stopping this little 15-year-old punk. I was as fast as I can go. And I remember Jesse, after about the fourth time I landed on my head, he looks over and he gives me the slow down gesture. and then he turns around and he points his two fingers at his eyes, like, watch me, pay attention. And for the rest of that year, I would find myself with Jesse a lot. And Jesse and I were probably the only two that ran that full series at the time, as far as GNCC guys. And, Glenn and those guys, they would just come every once in a while. Usually they worked this. I just got lucky one day and happened to beat him. I think Glenn actually crashed out, and I think I just had a really good start and got up in front of Charlie and Jesse. So it was just a luck day in a 2-hour race, but to me, I was the hot shit leading into the next one, and I just rode way over my head. And it's easy to do, and I think that happened to Gus at Coker. He was hot shit. He got up front. He was clicking it off, but then that third hour set in, and when you get to ride with some of those more experienced riders, for me, it was guys like Jesse at the local races. I learned a lot about patience and nailing your marks and figuring out how to go just as fast without crashing. And as a kid, it was at first it was like, badass, you're beating your idol, and then it becomes that learning curve of, why can't I beat him every weekend? Why was it just that once? What have I got to do to figure out how to beat this guy for 3 hours, or figure out how to beat this guy for a championship, or whatever it may be. And when you get in the mix as an XC2 rider with some of the XC1 guys, especially Strang and some of the veterans, you can learn a lot by the way that they ride the track and let the race come to them. And we saw the XC2 guys pass Strang and then get passed back by Strang, and I'm sure that they got to tag along and watch a little bit of what he was doing, and I'm sure it was good for him to be able to go back and teach his students again this week by saying, hey boys, that third hour rolled around and you boys started going backwards. I'm going to show you why.
Yeah.
So, no, it's definitely good for those guys to see the XC1 guys that teach you a lot. So as an XC2 rider, it's hard to learn. You're so focused on yourself, and there's so many guys gunning for that top spot. I think XC2 is definitely a little more competitive than XC1, and a lot more aggressive. There's a lot less thought process that goes on there. So when you can become the guy that actually thinks about the race for 3 hours rather than 3 minutes, it changes your perspective. And when you realize that a 2-minute margin in GNCC is not that much, it changes your perspective. And when you figure out that changing your lineup here and there is going to give you that much more in the tank in the last lap, it changes your perspective. So all these things that these guys are learning are huge building blocks. And obviously there's guys that just don't learn it, that guys that just have too much, I guess, too much of that killer instinct. It's really tough. I mean, I was one of them. I mean, I had that win or die trying mindset. So when you get there and you don't really know what you're doing, some guys it's really hard to explain, and it's hard for them to learn because they are just there based on natural talent and speed. So, I think I actually talked to Corey, my mechanic, about this a little bit today, and I was like, man, you look at XC2 and the guys that are coming through the class, like, I think Glendon is obviously really strong this year and will probably be very strong next year. But if I was going to put money on 2 other guys, like, I would say that Ryder Lafferty and Gus are like the next 2 guys in XC2. One of those guys is going to figure it out. And the only reason I say that is Ryder's been there for a while and he's starting to figure it out. He's got a win under his belt, so he knows what it's like now. He knows what he's working for. Gus has so much speed, the right guidance. I think those 2 guys, if I was going to watch the XC2 class, I would say that those 2 guys are going to be the ones to figure out 3 hours. And it's not about who's going to be the fastest guy. And I may be in total left field here, but looking at those 2, I think that they're going to be the next ones to kind of mature in that class.
Hey man, you're stealing my sleeper pick. Gus was my black sheep pick.
I would have argued with you before the season started. I would have argued with you. Obviously, he had a good ride when he came over here, but I just didn't expect to see. I didn't expect to see what happened this weekend just quite yet. Now, obviously, that track suits his style. That's where he kind of had his breakout ride to begin with. But
Yeah.
it doesn't take too many of those to figure out where you belong and how to get there.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, about that just being a good place where the Aussies make it happen, because Strang won there last year, Linden won there last year. When Linden came over and raced there before he was here full time, he did good there. Gus ran top 3 there, so I guess that is like a Aussie proving ground, if you will. But I think the crazy part, back to what you were saying, Gus is 17 years old, so he's got time to transition and figure it out. And for him, in his first full year over here, to already be 2 podiums in, the sky's the limit, I feel like. And then same thing with Linden, the way that he's developing and the way that he is transitioned into where he is at now. I think Linden's going to be very tough to beat in that XC2 class, regardless of who's in it. And he's proven that, and he's got the white plate, and I think he'll continue to prove that. How old is Ryder?
23.
Yeah, so he's still super young too.
Yeah, all of those guys could definitely be, the next guys that we see kind of coming up to XC1. And, you look back in years past, there was always another guy coming up in XC1. Year after year, there was a guy coming in XC1 that was battling for podium straight from XC2. And we haven't seen that. We haven't really seen many new guys on the radar. And you look back, even through some of the kids coming up, and it's not quite as stacked as it used to be. Like, I would say that there's, 5 guys that I'm watching between the XC2 and the A classes that I'd say could potentially be the next guy. In years past, it was like, you look through XC2, there's 5 guys. You look through the A class, there's 6 guys. You can look all the way back to the youth ranks and see a kid that just had that passion, that drive that, you felt like he was going to be the next one. So it's cool to sit here and speculate and try to think who will the next guy be that's going to be competitive at XC1, and will it be Johnny G? Will it be Gus Reardon? Will it be Lennon Snodgrass? Or will we go back to JoJo Cunningham and Grant Davis? Full Forbes. Honestly, that's pretty much the list. And used to, I feel like you could definitely look back and pick out quite a few more than that. But it's not as often you see those guys with that killer instinct and I'm going to do whatever it takes to win mentality. Kids are soft these days, so I think maybe Australia's just breeding a little bit harder kids.
Yeah. I don't know. They still got crazy COVID lockdown, so you don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't, and I don't really think it's that. I think a little bit more of it is what you give up. Like, these guys are coming over from another country to chase the American dream. They've given up their relationships, their family, everything they know. So when they come over here, it's you have to do it. Like, in that third hour when you've got to dig deep, like, they know what they sacrificed. I think a lot of kids nowadays don't know what they've sacrificed, so they don't know how to dig deep. Honestly, like, I would say that's Bub's number one issue. You look through a lot of these ranks and you see guys, and it's like they just don't they don't know what somebody sacrificed to get them here, what they've had to sacrifice to get here, and they can't dig deep into that tank to push through it just because they have not sacrificed enough, or they've not gone through the adversity to get to where they are. And I think that's another reason you see guys from other countries do really well here, because they know what they gave up. They knew what their parents spent, or what they spent, or how hard they had to try to get to where they are. And it's not something that it's not something that's really taught. Like, that's something that you just kind of have to find on your own. But obviously, with today's generation and everybody being right, nobody being wrong, and you know, anybody can get a free ride and the government's going to take care of you. Like, it's easy for kids to get soft. So, you know, it's preached on TV every single day. So it's you know, I think that's the American population, especially in the racers. Like, you've got to be that gritty guy, and you just don't see it, like, not near like when I was growing up. I mean, everybody was there. Everybody was there to win. Like, you were going to give it everything you had. I mean, every kid that lined up, I feel like back then was giving it absolutely everything they got. I mean, I grew up battling with Chris Meadows and Brian Lojack and Zach Nolan and Lane Michael, and all of us knew that we had to win every week. Like, we had to win. And obviously there's only one winner at the end of the day, but every single one of us knew that we had to win. Now you look back and nobody has to win. They don't feel like they have to win. If the going gets tough, they just flake out.
Yeah, and kind of like you mentioned, it's easy for someone up and coming in the sport that's driving from West Virginia, driving from Georgia, driving from South Carolina, to go up, not have the best day, so then all fall apart, and hey, you know what, we're going to drive home and we'll try again next time. Versus the people that have given up their entire lives to fly halfway across the world and try to chase a dream of riding a dirt bike. And kind of like you mentioned, it's when some of these riders can put into perspective what other riders are giving up to chase this dream, I think that would go a long way in their mentality of what they need to be doing. And on those days where you don't feel like training, you don't feel like riding, you don't feel like practicing, knowing that your competition came from across the world and is waking up every day getting after it.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, that, and on top of that, like, I think a lot of it too is the parents of this generation as well. Like, you know, I have a lot of, I keep saying, Corey and I were talking about it. My mechanic and I obviously have a pretty good relationship and been best friends for a long time. And like we were talking about it earlier, our dad, we could never make our dads happy. Like, there was no winning with those guys. It didn't matter if you won by 10 minutes, you should have won by 11. Like, it was that you always could be better. And now, like, you've got mom who's taught to be a total pushover on the kids, and dad who can't say anything because mom will get on his ass. And, you know, it's not like it used to be as far as family atmosphere at the track. Like, I mean, dads were hard on the kids. Like, if you were spending your whole paycheck to go racing, you demand excellence. And now it's not like that. I mean, if the dad gets mad at the kid, okay, we discuss it and then we move on. Like, my dad wasn't going to let me live it down all week. And, you know, as a kid, it's tough for you to remind yourself that you need to be doing better and you need to be doing more. I swear, as a parent, you have to, you know, jump on your kid's ass and let them know, like, you need to be doing more. And I think that's a lot of what we see, like, at least in the U.S. population right now. Like, the kids are soft because the parents are soft on them. And I mean, I know my parents demanded excellence every time that we went racing, and I think that had a lot to do with both my brother and I had a lot of early success, and it was because no matter what we did, we could have or should have been doing more. And, you know, we were constantly reminded of that. And now, you know, as an adult, I know that I could and should be doing more every day. And I am mature enough to understand that it wasn't just my dad being mean to me. He was trying to make my life better and teach me a lot of valuable lessons. And it does, you know, it does pay off in the long run. But it's stuff to tell people. You know, obviously I teach a lot of kids. I work with a lot of guys, and stuff to tell the parents, like how tough you have to be on the kids, like how much you have to demand out of them. And, you know, no parent wants to be told how to raise their kid, but yet they want you to make their kid the next James Stewart, and it just doesn't happen that easy.
Yeah, and like you said, I think the adversity is a big part of it. I mean, you've talked about your upcoming or upbringing and what your parents had to invest in order for you to go racing and kind of putting everything on the line to make sure you're at the track, and that kind of plays into the foreigner or a lot of them coming over. I don't know. I don't want to get into people's personal situations because everyone's different, but that adversity is kind of what fuels everything. If you can go out and have a bad day and quit and give up and get last place and nothing happens, hey, we'll get you a cheeseburger and a milkshake on the way home. We're going to pamper you all week, and then next time, hopefully you get better out there. That doesn't build that inner dog. That doesn't build that dog mentality. That doesn't make you go out and grind and wait for the next one. That teaches you that losing is okay. And I think that is not only a problem in racing, it's a problem in society. And it just trickles down to a more in-your-face example of it when it comes to racing.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's tough. I could obviously go on for hours on that one. That's a tough one. It's not something you can necessarily teach. It's gotta come within, but it's got to start somewhere. And I think a lot of it's tracked back to the parents and what is being said after the races, and what the rider or the kids actually think they need to be doing. And if they think that 8th place is okay, then and they're happy with 8th place, it's hard to tell them any different.
Yep. And that's where it all boils down to. So, like you said, this is a topic that can go on and on. It's came up before on here, but yeah, I'm with you.
It's nobody's there to guide you anymore through your work days, are there? Are they?
Well, especially not now, but yeah.
Yeah. At some point, everybody has to do it. And luckily for me, as a kid, racing was a job, and I had to put forth the effort then. And I learned a lot more about life through racing than most people my age.
Oh, 100%. And those same sentiments, and I know I've said it on here before, but those same sentiments I learned and I went through, and it's really, honestly, a pretty similar situation. And but mine was just combat sports. It was wrestling and then getting in MMA and stuff afterwards, and dirt bikes came after all of that. But it's building up all that same stuff. It's the individual sport. It's you against yourself. It's what's in between your ears is just as much, if not more important than what you can do physically. So a lot of those same sentiments are the same between the two, and it kind of relates back to it a lot. But speaking of that, last time we talked, coming off your worst national enduro finish since 2016, man. No excuses. No, I'm just kidding. But going into this weekend, where are you at? You calling your shot? What's your goal for the weekend? Talk us through expectations for Missouri.
I need to be top 3, to keep this championship fight alive. I need to be top 3 and try to get buckled down before the next one. Obviously, there's 3 guys that I should really focus on beating, or 4 guys. I think that the points are a little bit too close for comfort, and obviously still leading the championship, but I don't necessarily classify it as leading when I'm tied. But there's 5 really good riders at National Enduro right now, and as it stands, there are 5 riders that are in striking distance. I mean, you've got 46, 46, 44, 39, 38. I mean, the points are close. So, even beyond that, 33, 29. But it's this weekend, somebody is going to come out leading the championship. And I obviously hope that it's me, but I know realistically I haven't been on the bike that long. A podium's great, and I always obviously want to win, but and this is a race where I think it's definitely possible for me to do, but I do have to be realistic here and know where I belong, and I think that I definitely belong on the podium, and it would be great to go ahead and win this one and click it off and try to put a little bit of a gap between me and the other guys, but a podium's good. It keeps the fight alive and gives me more time to get back after it and get back to winning form. And as long as I can stay within striking distance and not throw away too many points between now and then, that's kind of the ultimate goal is stay in striking distance. So, podium's definitely where I need to be, and just got to make it happen.
Hell yeah. Well, if there's anyone that can do it, you can do it, and I think you proved that several times in the past. But, looking forward to it this weekend, keeping up to date with what's going on. And I know you got a full week ahead of you, too, as you're heading out there right now. But, man, this weekend, wishing you all the luck out there in Missouri, and we'll be watching along.
All right. Sounds good, man.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. Always a good chat, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.